Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home. Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the Freebirth Society podcast. This is a radical space for women who are ready to celebrate their autonomous choices in birth, motherhood, and beyond. Together, we'll learn about wild birth through personal narrative, we'll explore the politics of birth, and we'll analyze everything that relates to our lives as women from a feminist perspective. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Do you feel the deep calling to center yourself in rich womb wisdom and share it with the world? Do you crave to go above and beyond in your facilitator practice as a lighthouse of wisdom for your community outside of the medical system? Are you excited to discover and share in the depths and rhythms of your womb and long to create a life that honors your cyclical rhythms? You know your body and blood are the fertile ground for living an inspired, radically authentic, and powerful life. If you answered yes to any of these questions, then the Blood Mystery School is for you. It's a one-of-a-kind and comprehensive education that blends the sacred and the science of the seasons of womanhood. It's the education that most of us didn't receive, but that all of us deserve. It's led by two powerful medicine women, Nancy Laceinne and Kristen Hauser, who have 30 years of combined wisdom and knowledge that they have poured into this program. If you know this is your calling, it's time to step up the way you serve women into a full spectrum well-woman practice, fully outside the medical paradigm. Click the link in the show notes to join today. Space is limited and the doors close soon. Laceinne found herself quickly turning her back on medical midwifery and deciding to go it alone in her first pregnancy, despite having never even heard the term freebirth. Her simple motto of, "You got this," got her through her debilitating pregnancy and kept her mind clean and clear as she prepared for her birth. Laceinne reminds us that you can do anything for a few minutes at a time, and all you have to do to find your inner resources is to simply claim them. All right, welcome, Laceinne.
Hi, nice to be here.
I'm excited to hear your stories today. I'm also feeling jealous of your gorgeous warm weather.
It's really hot in Florida already.
Amazing. It's cold today, and I'm only a couple hours north of you, but oh well, it's freezing.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, you free birthed both your daughters from the get-go, and I love those stories because, as you might know, a lot of women find free birth after first experiencing birth trauma, first being really harmed in the system or with a medicalized midwife. And so I'm always just so fascinated and interested in sharing the stories where we're from the get-go, women are aligning with this choice and avoiding so much of the harm in the system. So you take us wherever you want to start. Like where is the beginning point of this story for you? How do you come to free birth? What is this first pregnancy like? Who are you before you become a mom?
Yeah, sure. So actually, so I'm from Florida, and I had been living in Miami for a few years, and I loved Miami. To me, Miami was like everything. And some things happened, and I ended up having to move back home, and I didn't want to. I was not eager to be back home. I'm from the Tampa area. And I moved back home, and probably a month later, I meet my husband, because we met on Instagram, actually. And he's from London, and I'm from Florida. Yeah. So
wait, he was in London when you guys...
Yeah, he's born and raised. He is a British man. He lives in London. And so we meet on Instagram.
Wait, so does he just like slide into your DMs?
What happened? So I think I followed a friend of his, and in that friend posted a photo, and he was in that photo. So I'm like creeping through his page, but it was like nothing, it's Instagram. I'm like, don't like, whatever. And yes, then he slides into my DMs, but my page was private at the time, so he couldn't see anything. So that's how we started talking.
Oh my God, adorable. So he saw that you were liking his pics and hits you up. Yeah. And the rest is, and now there's children on this planet.
And now we have 2 pre-birth babies.
Okay, I love that. Okay, amazing.
So we start talking, and then, I can kind of fast forward. I moved to London the following January. So that was a few months later. And then I moved back to Florida. And once I moved back to Florida, that's what started the visa process for me. So we got married in Florida, and then we didn't see each other for 6 months. So at the time when you're getting a visa, they take your passport from you. You can't travel and stuff. So we hadn't seen each other for 6 months, but we really wanted to go on a holiday, on a vacation. So we went to Hawaii, and Hawaii was beautiful. I spent my 30th birthday there. It was just majestic and magical and green and lush. And it was just amazing to spend also with my new husband, who I hadn't seen in 6 months. And so that's where we conceived my first daughter. And so once we came back from Hawaii, I moved to London probably like within the next 2 weeks, because I had gotten my visa approval. And so I landed in London on a Friday. I found out I'm pregnant on Monday. And it wasn't something we were like trying for or not trying for. It's just, it happens. And we were excited. We were like, cool, we're going to be parents. And funny enough, if you ask anybody who knows me from before I had kids, I never wanted kids. I'm not like this person who's like, oh, baby, you're so cute. Can I hold you? Can I take care of you? That's not me. Not at all. So when I got pregnant, I was like, cool, we're going to have kids. This is exciting, but not something I really fantasized about either, but not something I was rejecting at all. Just not something I thought about. And so I find out I'm pregnant on Monday, and everything's fine. I tell my parents and stuff, and we're all excited. We tell our friends. And I must have been like about 5 weeks pregnant. I mean, like I found out right away. And that was Monday. By that Thursday, Friday, I get really sick, really, really sick. I mean, I was fine, and then I wasn't. And I can't walk. I'm throwing up. I'm nauseous. I'm really sick. So, this being
from the pregnancy or from the food poisoning?
From the pregnancy. So this being my first pregnancy, and I don't have any friends who have had kids yet, I'm thinking, this must be morning sickness. This is what it is. So just deal with it. Come to find out, it's HG. It's hypermesis gravidarum. Right? And so nobody ever told me that. I'm just deep in my research, but I am sick. I'm finding out that with HG, you lose a lot of weight. You're throwing up blood. You're throwing up bile. You can't stand. You can't eat. You can't drink. And so as I'm reading these symptoms, I'm like, that's me. That's what I have, because it was bad. I remember there was a time my husband used to work all day. I'm sick in bed. I mean, what can I do? So I'm laying in bed, and he comes home, and he used to sit away from me because I couldn't stand the smell of anything. So if I smelled him, it would make me sick. And so he sits down and he drinks a glass of water. That set me off for like 2 hours, just throwing up, just with sickness. I was sick when I say sick. And so I'm, like I said, 5-6 weeks. I think it was around 11 weeks. I had my first appointment with the midwife in London. And I was looking forward to it because I was like, this person's going to help me. I'm so sick. I can't walk. I can't eat. I can't drink. I can hardly breathe. I couldn't turn over. Every day was a choice. Should I use the toilet or should I brush my teeth? I can't do both because I'm sick. It was horrible. And with nothing else to compare it to, I thought it was normal. So I go to the midwife, and I'm eager to go to the midwife. And she goes, how are you feeling? It took all of my energy to even get there. I remember walking in just so slowly because I couldn't walk. And I walk in and I'm excited. And she's like, how are you feeling? And I was like, terrible. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. Like, this is what's going on with me. And she just shrugs it off. She just goes, oh, well, that's normal. It'll pass. And that was it for me. That was it. That's when I was like, I'm having a free birth, because some explicitives probably, but I was like, you know, the one person who I had faith in, I don't know you, but this is sort of your field. You know, this is where you work. And I trusted you to do something, tell me something else, show that you cared. And all you did say was, that's normal, it'll pass. And I was like, but it's not normal. So right away, I walked out of there just really heated. And I was like, I'm doing this by myself, because I'm not the kind of person who typically does seek outside help. But the one time I was going to, you let me down. And it's fine. You know, it's not something I was angry about in a personal way. I was never angry with her. It was just like, cool, I'll do it myself.
So did you have any reference point? Like, did you know the word free birth? Had you ever heard about this?
Never.
Or is this just completely this internal, because that's like pretty radical to just be like, F you, I'm just not going back at 11 weeks.
Yeah, that was exactly it. I had never heard of free birth. I had never heard of unassisted birth. I didn't know these sort of keywords. I just knew I walked out of there feeling like, if you're not going to help me, then I'll help myself. And that's the kind of person that I am. I remember when I was 17, I used to play basketball in high school, and I tore a few ligaments in my knee. I tore my ACL, my MCL, and my meniscus, and it was a bad tear. And I remember we're in the middle of a game, and just all of these, you know, girls coming to crowd around me, and it made me angry. I was like, get away from me. So when I'm pushed to my extremes, I don't want help. I do better by myself. And so I hobbled myself off the court, and fast forward, I got surgery. And I remember there was a big stitch in my knee. It was probably like that long. And I go to the doctor to pull it out, but I didn't know they were going to pull it out. So she tells me to put my leg up on the counter, and she starts to tug it. And I was like, stop, what are you doing? I can take it out myself. Don't touch me.
Whoa, that's hardcore.
Because it's, you know, it's such a long stitch, you can feel it coming out.
Ugh.
And so I was like, can I do it? Because I'd rather be in control of what that feels like for me. And so, you know, that was 17, 18. I had my first daughter at 30. So, you know, that was over 15 years later. And I was just like, I'm just going to do it by myself. Can everyone just leave me alone? I'll just do it by myself.
Yeah, because I think in maybe an average, or I don't know the right word, maybe a different personality woman would just go interview with a different midwife, you know?
You know, I think, you know, it's funny how the world works, and it's funny how the universe is, because I think because I'm American and I was living in another country and I had never had a baby and my family's not there and I didn't yet have friends. It was just me and my husband. It was really easy to just say, I'll just do it by myself, because I don't yet have a community. And so even if in hindsight, I would have looked for another midwife, I wouldn't have even known where to begin, because it's not my medical system. I don't know how to navigate a different medical system. Yeah. So it wasn't even an option in my mind to just say, I'd rather see somebody else. It never crossed my mind. What did cross my mind was, I'll do it myself.
I love that. That's amazing. So you come home and you're like, babe, we're doing this on our own.
Yeah. So I think we get home. I'm a serial researcher. And so even though I was really, really sick, I was also like, I'm pregnant. And so I need to learn about what this process is and what's happening to my body and what to expect. And I think because I had HG, I was doing even more research, because, you know, I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with me and can I stop this because it hurts. So I'm researching and I'm researching and researching. And so everything that I'm learning, I'm sharing with my husband. You know, this is what pregnancy is. These are trimesters, and this is how the baby's growing, and this is how other people feel, but this is how I feel. And the whole time he's really trusting in me. And eventually we come across the term, probably unassisted birth before free birth. Don't know. But I finally come across that one key word that finally is able to lead me toward that sort of rabbit hole where I can find more information, but I needed that word. And so I find it, and, you know, I talked to my husband about it, but it wasn't like what do you think? It was just we're going to do this by ourselves, and here's what it's called, and here's what we need to know. And he was like, cool, let's do it. Let's go. We never had that fear, but I truly think it's because I didn't have people around me to instill that fear. It was never natural for me to be scared of it. what was natural was to learn about it so that I could know how to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I did. I did research and research and research.
And what was your reference point this far in growing up, just in your life, your own birth, your, you know, like what you'd heard about births? It doesn't sound like you really had friends yet who had gone through it. So did you feel like a fairly blank slate, or did you have like trauma stories in your family, or what was your reference point leading up?
Yeah, I think for me, there was nothing really concrete. I think all of us sort of get those stories about, you know, birth hurts and it can be scary and, you know, some people die, all of these things that we hear. But because there was no personal connection to those stories, they didn't impact me. You know, you see the movies, you might read a book, you might, you know, see an image, but it wasn't personal. Funny enough, my birthday was about a week or so ago, and we went out to dinner with my mom, and I was like, you know, tell me about the story of my birth. And that was really the first time I heard about it at 36 now years old. Yeah, I had never, I don't know, just because I think before I had my daughter, I wasn't into birth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and now 5-6 years later, I love it. Everything I do and read and research and listen to and talk about is birth and partition and being pregnant. But prior to that, like, yeah, I guess it makes sense to ask your mom about, you know, what your birth was like, but I had never done that before. So, you know, she said she had me naturally, and, you know, her water broke at home, and she kept going to the doctor and they kept sending her back home, and she said it hurt, but in hindsight, they like were forcing me to come out and all of these different things. But that was the first time I heard about it. And anybody else who, now that I've got a community in London and I've got these friends in London, we all have babies. But again, I was really the first one. I didn't have that super close community of friends here in Florida, here in the US. So there was really no one to talk about it with. So there was no,
kind of plays to your favor, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and all of this in hindsight, that I'm able, you know, that on one hand, I'm just like, I'm pregnant now and I miss my family, particularly my mom. On the other hand, I truly am able to do things my way with no influence of anyone else. And my husband was always on board. So we just learned together. And every time I learned something new, I would tell him about it. And he was like, cool. And, you know, leading up to the birth, if there were any sort of emergency protocols that we wanted to go over, he made sure he learned certain maneuvers and certain things to do in case he would have to. But both of us were very much like, let's do this. We were excited.
So you don't go back into the system. So you just cruise through the rest of your pregnancy. And does your symptoms get better? What's the rest of your pregnancy like leading up into the birth?
So I was really, really sick until, let me see, probably March, April, May, probably for like 3-ish months, really sick. I remember I missed spring that year. I was in bed, really sick. It was really hard. I'm losing weight because I'm not eating, I'm not drinking. I'm very dehydrated, but I can't drink anything. And then poor me, but being from America, I'm, you know, sometimes you have these really specific cravings. And since I couldn't eat anything, like what I wanted was what I wanted. But then, like, could he find it in England? It was a mess. Like, it was really hard. And so I didn't get much of what I wanted because it wasn't there. Or maybe he just didn't know where to get it and stuff. So probably around 3 months, I'm starting to feel better, and it completely goes away. I'm feeling good. I worked out every day in my pregnancy until I was almost 9 months pregnant, training probably 5 days a week with my husband. He was a personal trainer at the time, and I was feeling really strong and really good. The baby was moving a lot. The baby's growing. I did continue seeing the midwife for a paper trail. Let's be serious. I want to be able to prove that I've been pregnant with this baby in this country, and that's the easiest way to do it. So I didn't overdo it. I got one ultrasound when I was to confirm the pregnancy. So probably like 8-ish weeks. And that was the only ultrasound that I had throughout my pregnancy. And I would listen to the baby. I didn't do the Doppler either, just a stethoscope. And the baby was moving a lot, and like I felt fine, and my belly was growing, and I always measured on time. So I didn't feel like I had anything to worry about. I saw the midwife, I wouldn't say excessively, but A few times. I mean, probably 5, 6 times throughout the pregnancy. And you know how it goes. It's just like, how are you feeling? I'm feeling fine. Okay. Let me know if you're not. Okay. Bye. Like, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
in the back of your head, you knew that you were just like phoning this in to get the paperwork so that it made the birth certificate and registration stuff easy, but you knew you weren't going to be calling them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot of times you see people now who have free births, and when they're trying to get those birth certificates and stuff, it can be difficult because they didn't see anybody. And to each their own. But for me, especially as we're from different countries, I just wanted that part to be smooth. So I'd let them, when they ask about, what kind of birth they're going to have, I told them it was going to be a home birth, just left it at that. And so they always sort of expected a call from me. I just didn't call. And so now I'm full term. The rest of my pregnancy was really good. It was really magical. It was like really, really great. Felt really strong. Felt really good. And I remember, I think I gave birth to her at 39 weeks, and my mom came from Florida. She had never been on an international flight. So that was really exciting. And she landed on Friday, and I went into labor Sunday. So she just made it.
And yeah. So she knew that you were going to free birth?
Yeah. So there is a book, what's it called? Childbirth Without Fear. Have you heard of that book? And that book was really, really great for me. So as I'm going through my pregnancy, I'm going down this loophole. I really actually used Instagram as a tool. I was searching hashtags. Once I discovered those terms of free birth and unassisted birth, I'm like hashtag searching for any person who can give me advice, help me, help lead the way, tell me about their experience. And I feel like it was a lot more difficult to come by 6 years ago. Now, I feel like a lot more women are doing it, or maybe a lot more women are sharing it, but it wasn't something so easy to find in 2017. So I'm doing a bunch of research, I'm reading a bunch of books, I'm taking a bunch of notes. And so when I came across Childbirth Without Fear, I really liked how he wrote the book. I really liked what he was saying. And I remember ordering that book for my mom and sending it to her because she had been talking about coming to London for the birth. And I said, of course I got those phone calls or text messages from my dad, my brother, my mom, people in the family who were finding out that I was going to do this by myself, but I shut it down, which was easy for me to do because they weren't there. So I understand the struggle that other women may have when their family and friends are close. Mine weren't. And it did work to my advantage because I just either didn't answer them, I didn't reply, or, I was able to be direct with them without having to face them. I was able to say, leave it alone because this is what I'm doing. And if you don't support it, I'll talk to you afterwards. This is what's going to happen. But I didn't even tell a lot of people because I know how people are. I told my immediate family, my brothers, my mom, my dad, and I think that was it. And I instructed them not to tell anybody else because it's nobody's business because people talk. And that talking is what instills that fear that I didn't need because it wasn't part of what was going on in my house. So mom's getting ready to come. I sent her that book and I said, read this book. And if you're not in support of how I'm going to do this, I love you and I would love for you to be here, but then you're not going to be welcome here because I don't need that fear in my space. I feel strong and confident and it's going to be fine. And that's what I'm manifesting. So she was like, fine, I'll read the book and everything's fine. And my mom's actually really good with blood and emergency situations. She just needed to accept that. I think she probably needed to feel that I knew what I was doing. And once she saw that, then it was fine. The birth part didn't bother her. So she flies over on Friday. I go into labor Sunday. And I remember Sundays we go farmers market shopping, we go to farmers market, we go to Whole Foods, and we have this whole day. And I woke up at 4 a.m. and I have back pain. And I'm like, oh, my back hurts. Like mom wakes up around 7 and she's like, you're in labor. But as we all know, moms don't know anything, right? I'm like, mom, come on, mom.
Whatever, mom.
I'm not in labor. You only had 3 kids. You don't know anything, mom.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
I'm like, it's just back pain. So I'm rubbing my back. So we go about our business. And I remember we had met a friend at the farmer's market and we're walking and talking. And every now and again, I'm like, just hold on a second. And so that's when it hit me that like, oh, okay, I am in labor. Oops. But we shop at the farmer's market because I had learned, I could be in labor for days. It doesn't mean I'm having the baby right now. So we go about our business. We just take it slow. And we go to the farmer's market and we do our shopping, and probably around 6 or 8, we went out to eat because I was like, this could be my last meal for a few days. I don't know when I'm going to go into labor. So we went and we had this really nice Moroccan spread. We had hummus and falafel and I don't even know what else, whatever else they had, like beans, I forget what it's called, but we had this whole big spread, which was delicious. In hindsight, terrible choice because I ended up having the baby and I threw it all up. So I don't recommend eating so heavy.
Yeah.
But so we get home and it's like, maybe it's like 9 p.m. and that's when like active labor finally starts. So I'm walking around the house. We're like, okay, this baby is actually going to come. And we, I'm just sort of breathing through it. And then I get back labor. I wasn't prepared for that. Nobody mentioned back labor to me. Oh my goodness, that hurt. I wasn't expecting it. So because I didn't come across it and I didn't know how to counteract it, I was trying to find positions while I was having contractions, which made it worse. So I'm leaning on the wall. At one point, I try and lay on my back. Oh, that was horrible. That was a bad decision. That really hurt. But I'm going through it, we're just dealing with it. And where my mom's telling me, just walk around, just breathe. And it's overnight. I always felt like it was more difficult because it was 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And I'm tired. I had been up since 4 a.m. So, people tell you when you're in labor to rest, but like I couldn't rest. It's the middle of the night. I'm having contractions. I've been up since 4. And so I'm going through it. And eventually, you can create your birth space. And then like where you have the baby is where you have the baby. So my idea was to have the baby in my bedroom. I had like my Himalayan salt lamps and my diffuser. And it was just like my plants. It was all cozy in there. And I ended up having her in the living room because I wanted nothing to do with that room. I wanted the couch, which was in the living room. And we had like dining tables in there, dining chairs in there. And those, I remember in when I was transitioning, I remember like those contractions were so hard. And I remember just like trying to breathe, but so much easier said than done. So easy to tell a birthing woman, breathe, like not it's not how it goes sometimes, especially being my first birth. So I'm trying to breathe. And I just remember in Childbirth Without Fear, whether it's true or not, he said that in his experience, laboring women typically have 8 to 10 of those really difficult contractions before the baby comes. So whether I had 40 or whether I had 5, it helped me to get through just being able to say, there's only so many of these that will happen. And then it's going to be over. And I always liken that. I use the analogy of like, if you're working out, because again, my husband works out a lot and we used to train together. And, if he tells me to do push-ups, just do them. I'm going to give up sooner because when it hurts, it hurts. But if he tells me do 20, now I'm working towards something. Even if my arms feel like they're on fire, I can get it done because I'm like, I'm just doing 20. It's not going to happen forever. And so same thing with birth. Because I knew that it would eventually stop, you just push through. And so my water didn't break until probably about half an hour until she was born, which I had read. So I was prepared for that. My water didn't break. So I was never worried about like infection or anything like that. Those were not thoughts that I had. And then I could feel her coming. I remember sort of touching down there and I was like, the baby's coming. And so it was my mom and my husband present at the birth and then myself. And they were like, nothing's there, nothing's coming. And I was like, you guys don't know what I feel. The baby is coming. And so I get into like the squat position. I'm like sort of on all fours on the chair and she's coming. And I'm like, this is crazy, and they're watching. My mom has the most awesome pictures. She was so close to the action. She's like laying down, taking pictures.
Oh my God.
And yeah, she was there. And so I think they call it turtling, right? When like the baby's coming out, but sort of goes up with every contraction, comes back down, goes up. And that was hard. I had been, in labor all night. I'm so tired. And I just want her to come out. So rather than waiting for those contractions to push her out, I start pushing. And I knew I wasn't supposed to do that, but I was so over it. I start pushing and she eventually comes out. And I just remember crying because I swore up and down she was a boy. I was like, this baby is a boy. I'm having a boy. It's a boy.
Oh.
So much so that so at some point, I still remember at some point in my pregnancy, I had a dream. And in the dream, I'm laying in a bed and there's a baby laying right here. And I say, Mosiah. And the baby rolls over and smiles, the biggest smile. And I say, Mosiah. And again, he smiles at me. So I woke up in the morning. We are definitely having a boy because in Swahili, Mosiah means firstborn son. So I was like, obviously, we're having a boy. It's obvious. So she comes out, and girl, I start crying. I was like, I don't have a name for you. You were supposed to be a boy. What am I supposed to name you? You're a girl. And I just remember like I'm crying because I felt bad. I was like, I called you a boy the whole pregnancy. I'm so sorry. And I'm just
cared.
Yeah, so funny. I'm counting her fingers and her toes. I'm just sort of making sure she's good. And she was. And I call my brother and my dad. I called everybody back home in Florida because she was born around 10 in the morning. So it was like 5 in the morning our time here. And I'm just letting people know she's been born, and everything was fine. The placenta got stuck a little bit because it just was like lodged. I ended up having to like squat and cough and a little bit of a pull to kind of get it out. But after I had the baby, I go to the tub I had read, I guess at the time, that the water could maybe help things speed along with the placenta. So I went and I sat in the tub, but the tub's getting really bloody. And it's because of the placenta, I know. So my mom's saying, this is really bloody, like this isn't normal. And I'm saying, calm down, everything's fine. Again, nothing. And she's like, this is really bloody. And so I get up, and we had always planned to call the midwives afterwards so that they could see the baby. The baby has been born, the baby is fine, you can leave now. And so we called the midwives after we had the baby. And I don't know how it works. It was just my experience that they were kind of wanting to stay there and, just kind of be in my birth space. But I didn't want them. We didn't call them until a few hours later. The placenta was still there. So they're the ones who helped me get it out. They said, squat, cough, got it out. And then once that came out, we could see that I was bleeding because I actually had a labial tear. So that was hard, but that was my fault. I take full responsibility. Like I said, I was pushing when I shouldn't have, but I wanted her out. And I can't even say that I would do it differently today just because of what my mindset was then. It's my first baby. I still rocked it. I still did this by myself.
But there is no should. There is no you shouldn't have pushed. Like there's just what is. And you were instinctual, and you were, you know what I mean? Like it's not your fault that you had some tearing in your first birth. That just is a very normal occurrence, and it's still a physiological birth,
Yeah.
Well,
thank you for that. I correct my
there's
vocabulary.
There's no like shoulds in any of this. You gave birth, and a result of giving birth is often physiological tearing, and then it heals.
So I tore. I let them stitch me up, but me being me, I didn't get any like sort of medication or numbing anything. So that was horrible. That hurt so bad. But I don't like medication, and I would much rather just deal with things, as you can, I think, tell by my choice to free birth. I sort of accept things as they are, and I get it done. So I had sort of pushed through this HG and just dealt with it. A lot of women with HG get like IV drips and they go to the doctor a lot, which is fine. That's just not me. I just deal with it. And I trust my body, and I trust what I know, and I trust my lifestyle, and I trust my support system, and I just deal with things. And so I just dealt with getting stitched up. And then I sort of, nicely, but then I kicked him out. I was like, okay, you've done your job. You can leave my birth space now. And it was all really great. I was really proud of myself. We were on a high. We were looking forward to that birth because I think there was so much buildup towards it, like doing all of the research and reading all of the stories and talking to different people, because also throughout my pregnancy, whether it was Facebook or Instagram, if I did find women who had natural, even if it was a home birth experience, I made sure to listen to their stories, to reach out and to say, would you mind sharing for me what this was like for you? And anytime if somebody tried to come with any sort of negativity sort of within my bubble and say, it hurts, or for me, this is what happened, I shut it down immediately. So I didn't have access to any of those stories, because if they were coming my way, I said, no, I don't want it. I only want to know what I know. I only want to know what I'm learning. And I only want things to go the way that I want them to go. So I don't want to listen to that story. And it worked for me, because anything that I could access in my brain was only goodness.
And nursing was easy peasy?
No.
No?
Nursing was bad. It, again, I think I had focused so much of my energy and my time and my learning towards knowing how to give birth. Like, how do you give birth? What are the emergencies that could happen? Because a lot of times when you tell somebody you're going to have a baby by yourself, they say, well, what if something happens? And so for me, I started turning it around on them. And I said, well, what could happen? First of all, most of the people who say, what if something happens, don't even know what could happen. But if you push them, they might say, well, my baby was born with a cord around the neck. And so that gave me something to research. Okay, well, what if the baby's born with a cord around the neck? And that allowed me to learn, about Wharton's jelly and how umbilical cords are stretchy, and how most babies do have their cords tied around their neck, and how all you do is you unwrap it. It's not an emergency. And so I'm slowly able to uncover all of these inhibitions that other people have that, they're calling emergencies, that I'm like, they're not. Shoulder dystocia, well, what if the baby gets stuck? My baby got stuck. Well, I mean, first of all, maybe change positions, like, let's not give birth on our back, because that's what's getting the baby stuck, right? So I had focused all of my energy on all of that I didn't even focus on breastfeeding. I was just like, oh, that part's natural. And boy, was it not. It was hard. And now that I have my second daughter, I can compare what it should have been like, because this journey has been so easy and smooth. But with my first daughter, the latch was just bad. And probably maybe 3-5 days later, I don't know how it works over here, because I've not given birth like within the system in America, but over there, the midwives will come to your house for a certain amount of time after you have the baby to make sure everything's okay. And probably, like I said, 3 or 5 days later, they came over and they said, how's nursing going? And it was like the same experience all over again with the first midwife I saw when I had HG. They said, how's nursing going? I said, oh my gosh, it's not good. It's really hard. It hurts. I'm bleeding. And there was a few times that I think my letdown, now that I know, but my letdown was so fast that it would come like flying out of her nose. So again, now I know how to combat those things, but then I didn't know anything about breastfeeding. It was my first baby. And so when the midwives came and they said, how's everything going? And I said, it's not going well. They said, oh, well, that should balance itself out. Like, your milk will sort of balance and the baby will learn and it'll be fine. But to me, it felt like they were pushing me off. And again, to me, I'm not the kind of person to sort of convince them that I need help. I'll just figure it out myself. And so that's what I did. I said, fine, you're not going to help me. I'll figure it out myself. But their recommendation was that I get a nipple shield. And I got the nipple shield, and it just always felt so unnatural. I probably used it for like a week or two, but I didn't like it because I felt like it was breaking the bond. I felt like it was making things more difficult. And I felt like it was a crutch. Like, how is this going to help her learn how to nurse if it's not my nipple? So, but she needs to eat. So I'm balancing this. And so on my own, I start doing research about different positions and what else I can try. So I try laying her down. I try side lying. I try the football hold. I try, all of these different positions until finally I try holding her just up and down so that when she latches, she can pull the nipple out to elongate it, because the midwife tried to tell me that my nipples were flat. Again, all of this in hindsight is funny because I feel like within the system, they try, their words maybe make moms feel like they're at fault. And if a baby is born to you, then your nipples are perfect. that's that. You know, maybe we have to try different positions and different techniques, but there's nothing wrong with your nipple. So I didn't like the nipple shield. And so when I found that position, she latched and it worked and it was good. But I remember it wasn't until around the time, she must have been about 3 months, where I was like, I get it. I get it. I can breastfeed. But for those 3 months, it was
Brutal.
bleeding and cracking. And I remember like trying so hard to remain stress-free, and you know, taking, every time I had to nurse her, I would take a breath because I would be on the verge of tears because it hurts, but also she needs to eat. What are you going to do? And so I would have to take a deep breath and try to get out of my own head, because, you know, I also don't want to mess with my milk flow by being anxious, by being nervous. You know, you don't want those feelings sort of transferring to the baby. That's a lot of hard work for a mom, for a new mom, for somebody just figuring this out. Now I advise women, you know, if you're having trouble, seek a lactation consultant. But nobody was there to tell me that. I didn't know those key words. Nobody was pointing me in the right direction. I really did feel like I had to figure it out myself. And my mom ended up staying for a month, which was amazing because she was there to help me, you know, navigate that first month. But when she left back for Florida, I was crying. I was like, you are leaving me with a whole baby. What am I supposed to do with her? But, you know, you figure it out. And my husband's always been really supportive. So that was nice. And once we got the breastfeeding down, you know, everything was beautiful and magical. I ended up on my blog, I have a post about like what that breastfeeding journey was like, because it was really hard. But like I said, now that I have my second daughter who I can compare to, I see why all of the breastfeeding advice says that it shouldn't hurt and that you shouldn't bleed and that you shouldn't be cracked. But when I had my first daughter, I didn't know that. You can say that as much as you want, but unless you fix how you're doing it and feel the way it should feel, then you've got nothing to compare to. So breastfeeding was very, very hard, but I persist.
So you persisted and you guys just figured it out.
Yep. For me, there's no other
after
option.
3 months, after 3 months, it no longer hurt?
No, after 3 months, it's like, there was like a shift where, and I think, again, comparing it to my daughter now, my current daughter is 7 months, and she probably for the first 2 months, like just wanted to be home. She, you know, was, you know, they're sleepy. And if I was missing her window, like when she was ready for a nap, she'd be very angry at me for a long time. And for probably the first 2-ish months, she really liked to nurse in a side lying position. My letdown was really fast. And so when I think about the experience with my first daughter, I think probably, you know, had I taken things a bit more slowly, it probably would have been a bit easier. But again, like I didn't know what these things were. I didn't know to slow down. I didn't know to take it easy. I didn't know that my definition of being slow might not be my daughter's definition of being slow. And so, yeah, you persist. I'm very just like holistic minded. I'm very, I trust nature a lot. I have faith in the way that things are supposed to be. And I lean into that. And so when faced with adversity. Yeah. When faced with these situations, for me, there's no other response than to just get on with it. It's not going to be easy. It may very well be painful. It's hard. It's very hard. But for me, there was never going to be an option of formula feeding. It just wasn't going to be an option. So for me, I had to figure it out. There was no other choice. And I did. And it hurt. And, you know, so did the HG though. And so did having a labial tear. Like I just get through with it. I really feel like I'm able to come within myself and do that. And, you know, but I do have a very supportive partner who's like, cool, you know, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're saying you're going to do. Let's do it then, you know?
Yeah. I wonder what changed for her mouth at the 3-month mark, where it literally no longer was like, it became functional.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somehow.
Thank God. I have no, and she went on to nurse for 3.5 years. So she had no more problems.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was just persistence for me. It was just being persistent and taking that time and being patient and like I can't even say exhausting all options, because even when you've exhausted all options, I feel like there's more. But I tried everything.
Yeah,
I did as
I bet.
much as I could, you know, until I found what worked. And, you know, lucky it did.
Yeah. Okay. So then at some point you guys moved back to Florida?
Yeah. So COVID happens. And so I think after we had my first daughter, you know, we never, the big plan was never to stay in London, that we were never going to live there forever. But we had our daughter and we're like, okay, now we have a family. Where do we kind of want to live? But also we're not in a rush. It's just like in the future, where do we see ourselves? But COVID happens. And so I used to come home during the winters because I'm a Florida girl and London gets cold.
I feel you.
And it was really nice because it gave my daughter the opportunity to like be with her family. So we used to spend probably 2-3 months here, between like January and March when it's really cold in London. And so one year, I guess it must have been, I think it was 2019, 2020. I don't remember. But we're in Florida and we're here for a little bit. And my husband, we had planned a vacation to Brazil. My husband had been to Brazil. We had never been to Brazil before, me and my daughter. So he flies to Brazil from London and me and my daughter fly to Brazil from here and we meet up there. We're going to have a vacation. And it was a really, really nice holiday. And on our flight back home, it's just me and my daughter. My husband flies back to London. I think he may have flown back with us here and then flown back to London. I can't remember. But that's when we start hearing COVID. And we're not registering. We don't know what's going on. So he goes back to London and we're in Florida for a little bit longer. And he was in London for a few days and he's training a client at the time. And the client tells him they're shutting the US border down. And he's like, what? You know, my family's there. And he's like, yeah, they're shutting the border down. And, you know, they're talking a bit of this COVID stuff. And so my husband books it home, packs barely anything in a bag, is booking a flight on the way, and he flies to Florida. He lands at 7 or 8 p.m. and the border shuts at midnight. Like he just made it. We would have been separated.
Oh,
yeah. So that was
so
crazy.
intense.
Yeah, so intense. And I remember he called me from the flight saying, because we again live in Tampa, he was going to be landing in Miami. So he called me to say like that he would be landing in Miami soon. But my husband is very he doesn't give a lot of backstory. So he's just like, oh, hey, I'm like landing in Miami soon, just so you know. And I'm like, what? You're in London. What are you talking about? So I'm thinking he's joking. He's like, no, like I'm going to be landing, but also I don't have time to like talk. I have to go. And I was like, what? And I didn't believe him. But then I heard the flight attendant, you know, like now taking off. And I'm like, what is happening? So the flight from London to Florida is 8-9 hours. And the whole time I'm like, what is going on? Like, what are you talking about? So he finally lands and he's in Miami. From Miami, he has to drive to Tampa. So I still don't know what's going on. So he finally gets here. And then that's when he tells me like everything that had happened and why he came to Florida. But that time, you know, bearing in mind that he's a British citizen. And when you come here, you're only allowed 3 months at a time. So he's here, but we're like on a time limit. I'm American, but he's not American. So, and now COVID's happening. What are we supposed to do? So we're here for a little bit and then we fly to Jamaica. We have some friends there. And from Jamaica, we fly back to London. We're in London. It's summer, it's July. They had just lifted some of the restrictions that they had imposed throughout those months. And so we're seeing friends and stuff. And we're probably there for a month or two and everything's open, everything's fine. We're having a good time. But there was also a real eeriness in the air. It was just very weird. You know, you're watching the news, you're seeing headlines. And I remember they started shutting down the kids' library, the playgrounds. There was a park we used to go to and they had removed the swings for the kids, which I thought was too much. I was like, this is like, for me, this is ridiculous. That's
pretty dystopian.
Yeah. I was at the time, my daughter was 2, I think. And I was just like, what what am I supposed to do with her? Like, she can't go to the library. We tried going there one day. We were sitting on the floor reading books and they made us leave. They told us we were only allowed to check out books and leave. And again, she's two, but the museum's closed, the library's closed, the parks, they've taken away the swings. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with her? And so we're sort of watching everything that's going on. London's talking about, England's talking about, they're going to shut down. Like, you're going to need a reason to travel. You can't just go to the airport. You're going to need a note. And we're like, we're not doing this. We're not here for it. We're not doing it. So we book a one-way flight to Brazil. We're like, you can keep that mess. We're not part of it. So in our heads, we were like, we were just in Brazil. So we know the currency exchange. We know the vibe. We know what's going on. We were just there a few months ago. And we really like it. And it's summer there. Like, why not be in Brazil? So we book a one-way flight to Brazil, and it was hot and it was amazing. And we just figured, even if Brazil has restrictions, at least we can find a beach somewhere, and fresh fruit and coconut water and caldo de cana. We can find sugarcane juice, and we can just, be in our own little bubble if that's what we have to do. But in London, it would have been cold. Yeah. It would have been dark. It would have been lonely. We would have been cramped into a smaller space. We just didn't want that. So we go to Brazil. In Brazil, you're allowed to stay 6 months without a visa. We stay there 6 months. Then we fly back to Florida. While we're in Florida, that's when we have that discussion, and we're like, I don't think we live in London anymore. I don't know where we live, but I don't think we're going to go back to London. And so that's when we were like, well, since the world is like shut down and borders are shut down and stuff, like, let's try this out for a bit, like, let's stay in Florida for a bit. We did London, let's try Florida. And so that's how we ended up here. It was like, we were always going to leave London, but it was kind of like put on the fast track because of COVID happening.
Yeah.
And so
I'm thinking about how the 3-month thing, like, how does that, you guys are married, but is he now allowed to stay?
So when we decided to stay here, we also decided to use that opportunity to get his green card.
Yeah. Okay.
So he has that now. So now he can stay. But it was just like, you have to take your cards as they're dealt to you. And as we love to travel, but as we were sort of being forced to ground because, so many things were shut down, we were like, well, let's get your green card, because when you're applying for it, you can't travel, you can't leave the country. So we may as well do that now. Like, let's just start that process. Yeah. It's a better time than ever. During that process is when I got pregnant with my second daughter. And it's so crazy. I can get into it if you want me to.
Yeah.
Sure. So we're here. Everything's great. I feel good. My daughter has stopped nursing now for almost a year, so I'm like my own person again. And we're in Florida, and it was my daughter's 4th birthday. And we had taken a trip up to Tennessee. We rented a cabin with some friends, and it was amazing. And I had specifically booked a cabin with a jacuzzi, because I was like, when all the kids go to sleep, we can go in the jacuzzi. I don't like really drink, but I was like, I'll have a glass of wine. Like, this is going to be fun. And my period was late, and I was like, let me take a test just to see, because I want wine and jacuzzi, and I take this test and it says I'm pregnant, which was such a blessing, really, because it took a long time to get there. I had a miscarriage in between. And I also had a really, really big, I don't even know that there's a name for it. I had a health thing happen where when we were still in London, I was bleeding heavily bleeding for July, August, September, October, November, December, 6-7 months. I mean, bleeding through clothes, clots the size of my hand falling out. I was sick.
Wait, consistently or just with your cycle?
No, it was like, it would be 2 weeks, and then it would stop for a week, and then it'd be 4 weeks, and then stop for 2 days. And then so I'm like, my skin is yellow. I'm breaking out. My hair is falling off. The whole time I'm nursing, that was a whole other thing. And so to put it in the chronological timeline, that was going on just before our first trip to Brazil. So we had made the decision for me and my daughter to come home earlier that year. We came home in January because I was bleeding, and we had decided that the sun would do me good. So we flew home early. And then after that is when we flew to Brazil, and from Brazil we flew back here, and then my husband met us, and that's sort of how that all fits. But so yeah, so it was sort of the same thing, right? Because when I found out I was pregnant with my first daughter, I got to London on Friday. I found out I'm pregnant Monday, and with Tennessee, it was like the day before, maybe 2 days before, and I took this test, and we were really excited because we had been wanting another child. And everything was fine. The trip was really fun. My daughter had a great birthday, and we got home on Tuesday. And by Saturday, I was sick again. And I was like, no, like, please, Lord, no. And the whole time though, I'm trying to be in good spirits. I'm like, it's fine. With my first daughter, it was only a few months. I can get through a few months. Everything's fine. I'm telling myself this, I'm trying to manifest this. And as the days go on, I'm sick again. The same thing's happening. I couldn't roll over in bed without going into a spell for 2 hours. I remember just like, I would be sitting in front of my fan because you get really hot, but you also get chilled, and you're gagging, but nothing's coming out. And your whole body is tight, and I'm sweating, and you're crying, but you can't control it. It's just coming out. Like, it hurts. It's painful. The whole time I'm like also conscious that I'm trying to not have such a negative impact on my daughter's idea of what pregnancy is, as we learn these things. Yeah. And I'm like, she's
that's
like
terrible.
She's meeting people, and she's like, yeah, mommy like throws up all the time. She's really sick. I'm like, oh dear, you don't have to tell people. But so same thing happens. I don't leave the house for months. I don't see the light of day. And the whole time I thought it would subside, but like it didn't. This one lasted longer. I had it for probably around 7 months. And towards the end of those 7 months, it did ease up a bit, where I could leave the house as long as I ate every hour, very specific things, and moved slowly. But then again, I live in a very hot state, and I don't know if this is true. My aunt told me this. I don't know. I haven't done the research, but she said it was the hottest summer in Florida in 100 years. So it's the hottest summer in Florida, and I'm heavily pregnant. So I finally get over the HG sometime around April, and then May comes along. And I mean, it's already like 90 degrees here. It's very humid. So now I'm starting to get swollen, really, really swollen from the sun. And I'm like, how can I be like allergic to the sun right now? It's Florida. I can't avoid it. I just start getting really bad edema because my daughter got invited to like a end of school party, and we went there. And when I came home, my ankle was like the size of a softball. It was huge. And, they tell you to like press your thumb in it, and if there's an indentation, it's edema. And I did that. That was crazy. So my daughter, her like guest date was the end of June. She didn't come till July. So I'm just hiding from the sun for 2 months, which was like impossible.
And are you engaging in the medical system this time with this pregnancy?
So because I had the miscarriage between, and because I dealt with that bleeding, I always felt an air of like anxiousness and anxiety this time around. I had an anterior placenta, which didn't help with my headspace and like being stress-free, because I could never feel the baby. With my first daughter, I started feeling her move around 15 or 16 weeks. And I didn't feel my second daughter start moving until 30, 32 weeks. I couldn't feel her. So that was making me sweat. I was really nervous because I'd had that miscarriage. So when I was pregnant, I found out I was pregnant in October. I booked my first appointment for February. And that was because I wasn't feeling the baby move. Like, I was fine not going to the doctor, but I was starting to get anxious that I'm now like 19 weeks and I haven't felt anything because of the miscarriage. So I actually booked a scan and ultrasound just to like check in on the baby. In Florida, you can book them like as a separate service. So it was like $50 or $70, and they tell you if it's a boy or a girl. I told her not to tell me. My mom did not like that because I told her she could write it in an envelope, but don't show it to me. So I had this envelope in the room of what the gender of the baby was, but I wouldn't let anybody open it. So none of us knew. But so that made me feel comfortable. I went to the like scan and I saw the baby and the heartbeat was good and the growth was good. There was nothing crazy about it, weird about it, or off about it. And then I think I had an appointment with a doctor 2-3 weeks later. And throughout my pregnancy, I think I had 3 or 4 appointments where I did this time. So with my first daughter, I didn't use the Doppler. This time I did. Again, having the miscarriage scares me. So I was down with using the Doppler. But that's all I did. I didn't do any urine samples. I didn't let them draw blood. The doctor was really cool. She understood, she had a midwifery background, so she sort of understood my mindset. But for me, it just made me feel comfortable to just hear from somebody else that everything was okay, considering what I had been through between my 5 years of pregnancy from my first to my second. So yeah, I had 4 appointments. It was just mostly measuring my belly and listening with the Doppler, which always made me feel good. And then my first daughter, like I said, she came around 39 weeks. And so when I was 35 weeks this time, I think I was 35 weeks, that was my last appointment. I was meant to have an appointment at 38 weeks, but I didn't go because I was like, well, the baby's coming next week, so I don't really have to come at that time. And so that's when I stopped going. I was just like, cool, I'll just get ready, to do this. She'll be here when she's ready, the baby, who I thought was a boy again. I'm 2 for 2. I'm wrong. Listen, I don't know if they have masculine energy or what this is, but if I have another baby, I'm not guessing the gender because I'm not good at it. But so yeah, I stopped going to the doctor, and I never nested. This time I actually didn't even do research. I feel like with my experience with my first daughter, and then throughout these last 5 years, I've just really jumped all into birth. And so I feel like I'm constantly learning. I follow pages like yours and listen to a lot of other voices who are very like-minded. I learn about birth daily. That's what I read. It's what I watch. It's what I like. So this time I was like, well, I've done it once. When we found out we were pregnant, we were like, obviously we're going to just have the baby the same way. We've already done this. So there's not even a need for that discussion of how should we have this baby? The entire pregnancy, the only thing I said, my whole birth plan was don't tear, which sounds, funny maybe to people who haven't done it, because they might be like, well, how do you do that? And how can you not have another plan? And I was just like, well, because it's going to be fine. I'm not welcoming any other energy. And because I've already done this one time, it can only get better. I have a basis now, so it can only be better. I know what I'm doing this time, and I'm just not going to tear, because in London, I had the luxury of calling the midwife to come to me. But here, as I was free birthing, I already knew of the very real, that it could, if I were to tear, I would have to go to a doctor, probably the ER. There's one really close to us, but I'm not bringing my baby there. I don't trust them.
Well, probably a more honest way of saying that is if you tore, it's not actually about that. It's if you wanted sutures, because lots of us tear at home in our births and we don't get sutures, So it's really about that. So yeah, if you desired stitches, you would have to go into a medical system. You're not most likely bringing someone to you, which is pretty hardcore.
So like you said, if I would have desired to, if something would have happened, I would have had to, I might have had to make the decision to go, get taken care of. And I just wasn't going to. So I was just like, I'm just not going to tear. And it was really funny because now I have a very like-minded community of friends in London, but now I live in Florida. So once again, I don't have friends here who get it. And so my daughter does gymnastics. And so throughout my pregnancy, we were with a group of moms from gymnastics that I'm friends with, but they are not like me. We get along, we're friends, but everything that I'm saying is new to them. And so there's one mom, she's so funny. She has 2 kids, and one of her children is 11 or 12, and the other one's the same age as my daughter, so she's 5. And we're talking about the placenta one day because we were talking about a lotus birth, which I had with my first daughter, and she lost it. She started laughing out of nervousness, tears coming out of her eyes, laughing because she was like, I have never heard of a placenta, and I have 2 kids. And so it was interesting though, because she was like, because I had my babies in the system.
That's insane.
And she's my age. Had never heard of it. And she's laughing. And, you know, we're all laughing because we're like, how have you not heard of this? Yeah. So I just didn't have like a birth plan this time. I was like, it's going to be fine. I didn't do any research. Throughout my pregnancy, I was questioning myself. I was like, should I be doing research? Because I don't feel like I have to. And so I never did. I think it was the week, like a few days before like my estimated due date, I started gathering things. I got like the Chuck's pads, and I got, you know, the clary sage and the different like tinctures in case I was bleeding, and I don't know, like the herbs for the placenta in case I wanted to coat the, you know, because I was having a lotus birth, like all of those things. And I just put it out, and that was a few days before. And my family thought I was so funny because I was just waiting to the last minute. But I was, in my mind, I was like, everything's fine. Everybody relax. You know, if anything, there's a Walmart down the road. Like if I go into labor, you can go get it. It's fine. Everything's fine. And so, yeah, I was expecting her June 21st was her guest date. And she didn't come. And she didn't come until I was a day shy of 42 weeks, heavily pregnant, heavily uncomfortable, heavily swollen, heavily hot. The baby's so low. I can't sit. I can't talk. I still can't eat. I still can't drink. It was so uncomfortable. And so I felt like I woke up one morning and I felt kind of wet. And I was like, all right, that's weird. And so I get up to go to the bathroom and my water breaks. I start laughing so hard because with my first daughter, my water didn't break. So when it happened this time, I'm laughing because I'm like, oh, it does happen like in the movies. And I'm laughing and it breaks. And I'm like, cool, finally, like, you know, let's get out. You've been making me so uncomfortable for all this time. So I go to the bathroom and I clean up. And in my head, I'm like, I know that I should rest, but like, I can't rest. I'm about to have a baby. So I'm like chilling. And I'm messaging my friends in London because it's 2-3 o'clock here. So it's like 8 a.m. over there. So people were awake. And I get up to go to the bathroom again and my water breaks again. So this time I clean up and I lay a pad down and I get on the floor. I was like, let me get out of the bed. This is messy. And I'm talking to one of my girlfriends and she's like, are you sure you're like not in labor? Are you sure you're not having contractions? And I was like, no, like I just feel really crampy. Because with my first daughter, it started in my back. Because I was having cramps that felt like period pain, I didn't associate it with having contractions. And so when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, they are contractions. You're right. And so I get up and I take a shower around 6 a.m. I'm like, cool, you know, this is going to happen. Let me take a good shower and be ready. I call my mom so she can come over. And I stay in my room until probably 8:30 or 9. Just, you know, those early contractions are really mild. It's calm. You know, I'm just getting ready to have a baby. Around 9 o'clock, I come out to the living room and everyone's here. You know, it's the same crew plus my daughter. So my mom, my husband, and my daughter. And I'm laboring there. My mom braids my hair, and eventually they start to get, you know, more intense. And I'm just like, this is ouch, you know. And this was faster. My first daughter, the labor, the whole thing was probably about 14 or so hours. This time, my water broke around 2 a.m. and then I had the baby around 2:30. But I didn't go into like active labor until 12. I remember seeing the clock and I was on the couch. And another thing that I remember reading is that women sometimes feel like they're at their breaking point when they reach that active labor. So I'm on the couch and I'm on my hands and knees and I'm like, what was I thinking? Oh my gosh, like, what was I thinking? How can I do this? Like, I'm thinking that I have so much longer to go because it progressed so much faster. And I'm comparing it to my first daughter. I was like, how can I continue this? But immediately I was like, that needs to get out of my head. That is not what belongs. And my favorite affirmation was, you can do anything for a few minutes at a time. And I kept telling myself that. And it was so strong for me because I was like, you can do anything for a few minutes at a time. And so I'm feeling these contractions and I'm just like, you can do anything for a few minutes at a time. Like, you got this, it's fine. And this time I tried using a comb. I had saw that, you know, you can redirect what you're feeling if you squeeze a comb, but that didn't work for me. At some point I bit my arm. I was just like trying to like relax and, you know, be calm. And I was like, hurts, and I bit my arm and I had a really nice bruise there, which made me laugh. When my husband saw that, he ran and he got me a washcloth and rolled it up so I could bite that next time.
I had a mom once at a birth bite my neck. Like, she was holding on to me during her contractions and she just was like, ah.
Oh my gosh.
Bit me. Isn't that crazy? And I was like, okay, that's new. I've had a lot of women like bite my hands and stuff, like, but the neck, whole different level. Okay, keep going.
So yeah, I bit myself, and my mom and my husband are looking at me, what are you doing? And I was like, listen, it's better than pushing because I'm not tearing. I am not tearing this time. I will bite myself all day though. And I bit myself, and at some point, I think it was my mom. She was just like, I'm starting to see something. There's like more blood and stuff. So I get off the couch, and we had set up my daughter's gymnastic mat and put Chuck's pads on it so it was soft on my knees. And the whole time I didn't believe she was coming because it seemed so much faster than with my first daughter. And, I get into position. This time I was on all fours and I'm leaning on these like chairs, and I'm having back labor again. And my husband really needs to learn how to do the hip close thing because he doesn't have it and it hurts. And I'm just like, I remember sort of leaning this way because I'm trying to lean into that back labor because it doesn't feel good. And he's pushing and the baby starts coming. And my mom's like, I see the head. And I'm in disbelief. I was like, there's no way it's this fast, but cool, I'm down with it. And the baby starts coming. And this time I'm very like, we got this. I'm not tearing. Everything's fine. This baby, and the baby's head comes out and I feel the head, but I'm not tearing. So I'm taking things slow. I'm breathing. My mom's like, okay, you're doing a little too much breathing. Let's get the baby out, And so I sort of summoned the energy, and I'm just like, okay, like I could feel that I needed to lift one leg up to get her out. You can just feel that, but I didn't have the energy. I couldn't do it. So because the first time my husband caught our daughter, this time I wanted to catch the baby, but I just couldn't move my leg. So I was like, and then my daughter had said she wanted to catch the baby, but in the moment she was like stunned. So sure. She didn't, she was moving too slow. So my husband moved into position, and I sort of like took that one last breath and got her out. And it was totally painless. It's just this huge sense of relief. You're just like, 42 weeks, all that HG, the miscarriage, the bleeding, the first birth. It's like, it's done. It's over. You're here. And she was beautiful. Like she didn't cry right away. She was just looking around from the moment she was born, just scanning the room, and just a full head of hair. And we had gotten, like a fish scale. She was 9 pounds, just so big. My first daughter was 6 pounds. So 9 pounds, especially with how sick I was feeling. I wasn't expecting. Big baby, just so like calm and beautiful. And she must have been like 20 minutes old. I made a video of her saying like, this is the baby. She was born to send to my friends. And I'm just so calm in it. And everyone's like, you just had a baby. Like, you don't sound like you just had a baby. And it was really nice this time as well, because I had the experience of the first, I was able to take things even more slowly, more patiently, more gracefully the second time around. And, I just remember I could feel that the placenta wanted to come out, but I just wasn't ready to stand up, and it was fine. I just sat down, and as soon as I had her, I let her kind of sit with dad, because I was just like, I was so sick, finally, like this part is over. And then I could feel that the placenta wanted to come out, and I squatted down and it fell right out. And I was just in such relief. I was like, great, I really want to shower now. And I went and I took a shower, and we don't rush to like clean the baby or take off that super important vernix and whatever. So she was just wrapped up, and we sat on the couch and we just chilled the rest of the night. It was beautiful. And then she was born just before 3. It started raining right around 3, because in Florida in the summer it rains. And it was so nice because it was just like cleansing and calm, and it got dark in the house, and I was hungry and thirsty, and it was so nice. And the labor was just so beautiful too, because throughout it, my husband had really serene music on. We had incense on, and everybody was calm. And I just kept saying, every now and again, water. And he would give me my water, and I would take a sip, and then just water, take a sip, everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine. Everything is as it should be. I can do anything for a few minutes at a time. And she comes, and it was so peaceful, and I didn't tear. And I was so proud of that, because that was my birth plan. And yeah, and she slept like the first few days for 4-hour stretches. So we just sat there, and I caught up on all the fruit. I had a lot of parfaits and rambutan, and it was cherry season, and coconut water. And I was just eating, because I couldn't eat what I wanted to for so long. I was just eating, and she's sleeping, and she nursed so beautifully. Like, because I nursed for 3.5 years, I could feel what it felt like. And I was like, this is great. And my milk came in probably 3 days later. And like, it was just so nice. It was so beautiful. And I think even now, 7 months postpartum, I'm just really happy and proud of myself for taking things as slow as they need to be taken. I haven't rushed anything. I've been really graceful with myself. I'm happy to be home. I'm happy with my body. I'm happy with my mindset. I'm proud of how I've done things. Everything's just been really magical. I'm really happy with it.
Amazing. Love hearing that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's been really nice.
I love picturing in the rain. And yeah, it's beautiful.
It was a nice setting. The rain was like, just the only thing that could have made it better was like fresh baked bread.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That would make anything better. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing these. I love these stories.
So nice to talk about birth and our birth, and so nice to talk to you.
And that's it for today, my sisters. Check out everything we do, including one-on-one and group coaching, learn about our private membership, in-person retreats, and more on freebirthsociety.com. Our online courses are on freebirthsocietycourses.com, including our flagship course, The Complete Guide to Free Birth. Don't miss the Radical Birthkeeper School if you're ready to become the authentic midwife that women are searching for. Together we rise, and the revolution starts inside each of us. I'll leave you with our Free Birth Society theme song, Wild Woman by Aruba Red.
I honor you for the wisdom you held, the ancient traditions of plant medicine and womb magic. I feel the spirit of the ancestors as I place my hands upon my belly. This sacred portal will be honored. Eons upon light beams of survival, withstanding the eradication of our power by design. I will not allow the separation of our young to be forced upon me. My sisters will no longer birth in captivity. The picket line redefined from burning our wild women to paralyzing us and drugging our babes. Strapped down in a clinical white bed, drying up the milk from our breasts. Keep your needles. My family will never again be doomed to chase those dragons or your poison. We reject your fear. We choose love. Everything with intention. Death, ascension. I will fly and